to the Metal Command Podcast.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Metal Command Podcast. Tony here with you. And as always, I do appreciate any support you do give me on the show. So if you like what you see in here, please, by all means, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video. And if you are following me on any other form of social media, by all means, give me a like and a follow there. Today's show features an interview with Torsten Ihlenfeld from the band Brainstorm, one of my favorite European power metal bands, and one of the more unique power metal bands out there as well, especially in Europe. Torsten is one of the founding members of the band. He's one of the guitar players, and this is the first time I've ever interviewed him. They have a new album coming out, Brainstorm does. It's called Plague of Rats. It comes out February 28th, and I was really excited, and I'm really excited to bring him on the show for the first time. Now, typically, I've always interviewed Andy Frank, so this is the first time talking to Torsten, and I'm really excited to bring this interview to all of you. So with that said, here is the interview with myself and Torsten Ihlenfeld of the band Brainstorm. Welcome, everybody, back to the Metal Command show, and I'm here with Torsten Ihlenfeld of the band Brainstorm, one of the original members, and of course, he does play guitar in the band, and Brainstorm, of course, being a band I have followed since the first record came out. Torsten, it's really nice to talk to you. I've never spoken to you before, but I am really excited to have this conversation. You have a new album out, Plague of Rats, which, again, is another great record in a streak of really good albums. And let's talk about the album and maybe the theme behind it. It's the songs, when I listen to it, seem to be a little bit related to each other. And maybe you could talk a bit about the album itself and give us some details on it.
Oh yes, for sure. First of all, thanks for having us. And Plague of Rats is. It's not a concept album, so we're not a concept album band. But as when you write the songs for an album, of course, many stories may connect to each other because of recent happenings that happen in the world. So
sure.
We're not a concept album band, and one of the main topics is. As you can see on the cover, is like bringing back those Eastern harmonies and stories a little bit,
right.
which we very much focused on, for example, on the Soul Temptation album.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because this record again is. I think it's phenomenal. It's something weird. I remember when the other band that he was in, Simforce, kind of broke up. It seemed that the records got a little better. I don't know why that is. Maybe he was able to concentrate on the band a little bit more. But the songwriting on these last three, or probably the last four, are probably the four best records I think you've done. And just so you know, I followed the band when the first album came out, which was a long time ago, and something happened, with the songwriting on with this band, because I can tell you that, Midnight Ghost blew me out of the water, and it was not what I expected. And then obviously the next two records, including this one, I think are great. And, does something change or, with the songwriting? Because, the band was great. Manus Mortis was like a huge, underground cult classic type of record when that came out. That always seemed to be the album where people really ended up getting into you guys. But something in these last three records, man, I think is great. And has anything changed starting starting in 2018? Because I don't know, maybe it's me, but these last 3-4 records have been just amazing.
Yes, absolutely. It's we have absolutely the same opinion. It's not that too many things changed, but after the Scary Creatures album, we changed the producer. Since Midnight Ghost, we are working with Zeeb Leverman. Mm-hmm. For the last 3 albums now, Midnight Ghost, Wall of Skulls, and Plague of Rats. And he's a phenomenal guy, and for us, it's something like the 6th band member. So he's so incredibly talented with everything that has to do with music, songwriting, melodies, and he's definitely one of the main reasons for the level up, so to say.
Okay.
Without having to lose our brainstorm identity. So when we go into the studio, it's, let me say, 90% of the songs are as they are, but the 10% input that Steve gives us to the arrangements.
Right.
His input is much more than 10%, but I'm relating to the songwriting stuff. It's exactly the level up I think we need. And the last 3 albums have been, or at least the last 2, Plague of Rats is still coming out February 28th.
Right.
But the last 2 have been one of the most successful albums in the band's career.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I've always said this, and you're one of the bands that fits under this category where, most people, if you're a power metal band from Europe, they have a kind of a specific sound. You got a lot of Halloween influence in it. Brainstorm sounds more American. I've always said that, because American power metal is a little darker, and you have bands that are not making albums that sound like anything like they came out of Europe, but you guys sound more American. Do you ever, I've said that, do you ever get that? Do people tell you that? Because you have a much darker sound, like a band like Mystic Prophecy would probably be under that category from Europe. They don't sound European, right? But you have more of an American sound, and you never really fell under the other umbrella of a lot of these other power metal bands. Do you hear that a lot? Is that something that you sought out to do, or it's just the way you've written your songs and what came out when you recorded them?
And yeah, it's we hear that very often, and I totally agree. I love American power metal, and of course I love European power metal, but we're not that kind of band. We never have been. So yeah. It was always for us. It was always like we are more riff driven, not speedy melody driven, so to say. Yeah.
And it's interesting you say that, because a lot of the bands from Europe that sound American are a little bit more riff driven. You're not having this crazy speed metal type of thing going on. But, and I remember the first record, the very first album, Hungry, that came out. And I noticed that right away in those first 2 records. And the late 90s were kind of like this time period where, power metal and heavy metal and stuff in Europe, about that 1998 time is when it was starting to really kind of make its little bit of its comeback a little bit, yes. And talk about being a part of that, because that's about the time I ended up getting into the band, and you were a part of that. What was it like coming through that? Because before, people thought the whole genre was pretty much dead, and then here come all these bands in 1997, 1998, just making these incredible records, and you were part of the beginning of that.
Yes, yeah, it felt great. It's we have been releasing demo tapes 8 years until the first album, mm-hmm. And it was always cool, but it did not get the feedback, especially from the record labels, because nobody wanted to sign a power metal band. Mm-hmm. And so we got first signed from BO Records, and a few weeks after we signed, we had the first Hammerfall album coming out. Yeah. So, and for me, that was kind of, power metal is back. Everybody loved that album, and we released our album and went on tour with the Morgana Le Fay guys, and everything seemed to start, and it was a wonderful feeling, And then all of a sudden, there had been so many great albums.
Yeah, I mean,
2 years.
Yeah, Hammerfall kind of like out of nowhere sold like 100. I think it was like 125,000 copies out of nowhere. Nobody expected that, and suddenly you had all these kids showing up to see him play, which was like insane. And I remember when that album came out, it was like it was one of the things that changed the game and that is for me when the resurge the you know the resurgence of heavy metal. Sorry, I couldn't get that word out. Started to happen because then a lot of the other old school bands like your Gravediggers and Blind Guardians and Halloween Gamma Ray, all of them, they were still around, but then they kind of also ended up getting a resurgence as a result. And then you had all these new bands, which you were definitely one of them. And that'd be an interesting tour. Morgana Le Fay, Brainstorm, and Hammerfall. Man, that would be cool, actually.
Absolutely. We had, in addition to Morgana Le Fay, we had the Solitude Eternus guys.
I remember them. Yep.
It was a phenomenal tour. It was our first tour, so it's something special from start to finish, Right. But we had two other great bands playing every night, and it was a cool experience and a big adventure.
Yeah, the one thing that for me really was always disappointing is I always thought you guys should be a lot bigger than you are. In all seriousness, like when I see Hammerfall and they come and tour the U.S., which they do every once in a while, it's kind of like I always thought of you guys as one of the bands that I've always felt deserved more attention. And do you think that may have something to do with the market that you're in over there being a lot different? Because in my opinion, I listened to your records over the last 25, 26, 27 years, and it kind of baffles me how you're not like over here touring. I know the cost of touring's gone up, but I'm saying in general. I mean, you came over here and played some shows here and there, but do you ever feel that way? Because for me, I've always said, as long as I've done my radio show and now this show, that Brainstorm was one of those bands, man, that should be bigger than what they are.
And yes, of course, we wouldn't have said no, if we would have gotten the chance. But we're still doing very good here over Europe, and maybe we sound too American for the Americans to be interesting enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or lack of exposure. I think that's kind of what it is, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, but for us, we have such a long, good running career, and
yeah,
you cannot have everything, and for us, we enjoy making music so much, and we're still welcome everywhere we come and play,
Yeah,
and we have every album in several official charts here over Europe, so the band is doing good, and we're long running, but for us there's no reason to end this because we all enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
So maybe we make a second career over there in your country with the next albums. Who knows?
Yeah. And I think part of the reason too, and I've said this a couple times, when I look at the lineup in the band, I mean, aside from, really changing a bass player here and there, the four of you starting, when Andy joined, the four of you have really stuck together. And I think that's really led to the consistency that this band has that this band really has. And what has kept the four of you together for as long as you've been, since I think Ambiguity might have been Andy's first album, what has kept you all together for this long? Because face it, man, you're in a band. I mean, sometimes not everybody gets along, but you guys have managed to do that. And what's kept you together?
And we still share the same vision, and we still love each other, although we know each other so well. You know? And especially Andy and me, it's like for me and Andy, it's kind of the perfect combination when it comes to songwriting, when it comes to share the visions from album covers, and how we want to deal the band, And it's Andy is 25 years in now, 26 even, and it still feels great. Every time we meet, every time we write songs, or even when we are discussing, and we always have huge discussions until both of us are satisfied with the song.
Yeah.
But it's always a meeting with the highest possible respect for each other, and that's the main reason. We don't call each other idiots.
Right.
We call each other friends and musicians, and we're yeah. I think that's one of the main reasons why we're together that long time.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's the bands that really put great records out, they usually have a lineup that's not changing all the time. And as you pointed out, you have a producer that kind of fits in with the band and is like the sixth member. I think, and the interesting thing about it, I think that's where things really changed for the better with with the upcoming album than the last two before it. So it's like you got a great chemistry with that, and I think it's cool. Now, you made a switch to a different record label. AFM obviously is not where your albums are being put out anymore. Obviously, Reigning Phoenix Music.
Yes.
And talk about the switch of moving record labels, because I know some things had gone down with a few labels over in Europe. But what ended up when you signed RPM? What made you want to go there after kind of the other business stuff happened with AFM and some of the other record labels that are going on that have a lot of changes going on, as we can call it?
Yeah, definitely the main reason is because of that changes. It's when a record label, and we have been with AFM for 15 years.
Yeah,
it's quite a long time. And when many things change that for us as a band don't feel right or don't feel good for the future of the band.
Yeah.
Then you need to talk, and we talked with the guys, and everything was about. So we ended the contract sooner than it was expected to end, and but that was all fine. It was good talks, and everybody understood each other's position. And the Reigning Phoenix guys, we know personally much longer, and some of the AFM guys switched to Reigning Phoenix, so it was for us, it was not that big step because we already knew the people working there.
Yeah.
And Reigning Phoenix wanted the band, and we wanted to change to Reigning Phoenix, and so all things came together. And with all that changes, we also changed the booking company. We changed to Decibel Touring. It's kind of a new setup for the band, which is very interesting and starts much new fires, so to say.
Yeah.
So, and it feels very good. Up to now, it was definitely the right decision.
Yeah, especially when things are not as, let's just say, not as easy as they were, say, 5-6 years ago. Cost of touring has gone up. The amount of music coming out today, like in one day, is more than I think I read this statistic. Then one day's release, one day's worth of albums is more than everything that came out in 1989, which is insane to think about. But you have those challenges, and I think you have to have some kind of backing that really helps with that. And it seems like you've had that. I mean, I've seen very good, and I think AFM did a good job too with your band, where you really got a pretty good amount of publicity, for a lot of stuff. So, but yeah, going to that label because they have a lot of really great bands. So I think great move for you, actually. And I'm really, really looking forward to when the album actually does come out at the end of the month as well, on that note. But has it been difficult? You're a band that's not, you're not Iron Maiden or like AC/DC, but, you're still a band that's been around a long time. Is it difficult for you to tour, to book a tour? Or do you have more of like such a consistent fan base that aside from the cost of everything going up, it really hasn't affected you as much?
And yeah, it's as you say, it's we have a very loyal fan base,
Hmm.
which makes it easier, especially nowadays with all the costs increasing nearly daily. At least it feels like that.
Yeah.
And um, um, we toured every album, and we're in a very lucky position that we always had good record companies and good booking companies behind us. You
Hmm.
know, starting from, of course, BO Record was a small label, but when we switched to the Metal Blade Records guys, then we switched to AFM, and now we switched to Reigning Phoenix. It was always kind of a good relationship. So no fights, no argues. So that feels very comfortable, and that made it for the band easier to build up a really solid and loyal fan
Yeah.
following. And that's why we still can tour. You know, it's of course when you do a Nightliner tour nowadays, there's not a big chance for bands in our size to earn money that much. You know,
No.
it's more you have to concentrate on the festivals to equal the cost you had for the tour,
Yeah.
something like that. You know, but we're still going good, and we still love being on stage, and the people honor that, and the people see that. So, and that's why they are still coming to our shows.
Yeah. I still remember you guys so many years ago coming to Cleveland, and then you played the Brave Words Bloody Knuckles 6-pack, which, they had that for a couple years. Those shows were great. Talk about what that experience was like, because it was in a very early days of the band. I mean, it was a long time ago, and it's hard to believe it was that long ago, but it was over 20 years ago now. And talk about coming over here and playing those shows, because a lot of great bands. There were a lot of really good bands, and we did have some bands from Europe come over.
Yes, it's for us. It was definitely one of the biggest dream coming true,
Hmm.
being able to do a show in North America. You know, it was like, especially for Andy. You know, I've never seen a guy doing so many pictures and enjoying it so much, and it was for all of us. Getting the chance to come over and play. It still feels unreal sometimes. Although we played some shows, but it's definitely something special, and we cannot say thank you enough every time we get the chance to get over.
Yeah, I just remember watching that show, and it's one thing if I hear you guys, listen to the music, but when I saw the live show, I remember people commenting about that, about Andy as a frontman, and just about the band. And people, I think you probably gained just in this area, probably quite a few people as far as fans go, because I had heard the band, previously for the, some of the early stuff, but when seeing you live for the first time, I was like, I was probably, I was basically a kid, but it was really cool when you came over. And I think Andy, you could tell there was that enthusiasm because the performance he had on stage was phenomenal. But I met him actually. He came out, talked to a bunch of people, and that it's you were one of those bands back then that really was very inspiring with your performance over here. So it was really cool, and I bring it up just because I'm from this area, and it was a pretty significant thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's Andy is not only, as this was a special show. Andy is like that on all the shows. You know, he goes on stage and he wants to have the people have the best possible evening when visiting a concert, and so is the band. And it makes things easier when you play together for such a long time.
Yeah,
You know every step the other guy does without having to talk about it before. And that's one of the greatest things, because when we started the band, it was like, how great would it feel to be able to do a concert? And now
Yeah.
we have, I don't know, 1,000, 1,500 shows in our back, and we still love every minute of being on stage. And people see that. So I think that's one of the main reasons why we're still around.
Yeah. I want to go back and talk about one thing that did happen, and I thought was a very good thing when you remixed Memorial Roots. You know, remember when that came out? I remember when that album came out. I liked it, but I was disappointed with how it sounded. And then probably 7 years later, you remixed it. I remember, and in fact, I remember listening to it, the remixed version of that record, and I was like, I remember, I think it was the song "Cross the Line" when he first did the remix, and that kind of like just real fast riff in the beginning of the song. I was like, man, they improved this. They remixed this album and improved this. Talk about that, because I remember Memorial Roots did get a lot of bad press when it came out, but I think you more than compensated for that press with the remix and obviously bonus tracks and stuff like that.
Yes, definitely. It's Memorial Roots was it was a hard album to make. Everything was kind of, how can I say that? It felt very dark around the band. Not because of the band not doing well, but
yeah,
we changed to AFM, and we had the songs written and they felt great, but we wanted to have a different approach to the sound. We wanted to have more dynamic. And when we did the mix, we felt, well, that's what the album needs. But looking back at it, I think we went a step too far, and people didn't get it. And as people are used to a sound that is very compressed and compensated, not open to dynamics anymore, that's why people didn't get what we tried to express with how we mixed the album, And when you get that kind of feedback, it's not a good decision to say, well, it was a fault and we change it now immediately, because there was a plan behind it, and the plan was just that didn't go well, Mm-hmm. So it of course took some time, and until we found the time to really have time for a real remix, not only a remaster, because the album needed a real remix, and we had so many good songs in addition from that songwriting phase. So we decided to make it a real remix and remaster thing with, I think it was 6 bonus tracks.
Yeah, I had a lot of bonus tracks actually.
And and then all of a sudden, people that hated the original version loved the new version.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it was really the sound. The song, it's interesting you mentioned that. The songs on that album are unlike anything I think you guys have ever written before or since then. It was just, it was such a different record, but the songs themselves I thought were well written. It almost felt a lot more progressive, probably more than power metal for me. And that, to me, I remember what I said about the album, aside from the mix not being the greatest for me, I thought the songwriting and the route you went down was really cool, because that album, you kind of evolved in your songwriting from what you were doing before.
Absolutely.
And it was so much different. But then now I listen to the records you're putting out now, and you do still, ever since then, you still have some of that progressiveness in your music ever since that album came out. And I always felt that for me, that was an important record for you guys, because it was a progression, from what you were doing in the past. So, but yeah, I loved the remix. I mean, the bonus tracks were really, really cool. And that whole package was great when it came out. And I had almost forgotten about the album a little bit until I read that, back in 2016 that was coming out. And I thought the job that was done, the remix, was great. And I think you really hit a home run, as we say over here, with that. So, but I always thought Memorial Roots was kind of a turning point for the band in the songwriting department in a good way. Yeah. So, I figured I'd bring that up because the other day, before I did this interview, I'm listening to the back catalog and I'm like, man, I forgot this album got remixed. So
Yeah,
that
absolutely,
that
absolutely. But yeah, it's great to having had the chance to do that remix. You
mhm.
know, it's of course everything is a question of money, and it was a
Yeah,
huge project. You know, to open up all the files and do a real remix. You know, which of course was a financial risk, but we wanted to give the album the sound that it deserves,
yeah, no,
and we're still very lucky that we did that.
yeah. The albums, yeah, and the albums that really ended up for me when you guys when Brainstorm really started getting a lot of notoriety and people really started coming to the band was Ambiguity and Metis Mortis. You know, those two records coming out, I remember because I had known about the band before that, but those two records really were kind of like breakthrough albums for you. Do you feel that way? And how do you look? How do you look at those albums? You know, over 20 years later now.
It's there is some significant albums where you recognize it that there happened something with the band.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's Unholy was kind of bringing the band into a little bit into the international stuff. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Japan was big back then still, and we had some very cool features there. And with Andy joining and with the change to Metal Blade Records, Brainstorm was recognized as an international band and as a touring band, let's so to say.
Yeah.
And we leveled up the songwriting because we concentrated that much on putting out the best record possible. You know, especially with Andy joining, it was for me it was like finding a songwriting partner that I not searched for, but that I found then. You know, and I think you can hear it on the songs. And with Metis Mortis was the last album that just scratched the album charts. And from Soul Temptation on, we had every album in at least in the German official album charts. We have every album since then is in the chart, you know.
Yeah.
So, and the next step, of course, was Liquid Monster, where we had been changing to a headlining band.
Yeah.
So we did the first headlining tour with Liquid Monster, and we had Achim Köhler producing the albums. So that has been the first time we started to work with a producer.
Yeah.
And next up was Downburst and Memorial Roots. We worked with Sasha Pate, who is doing the Avantasia.
Yeah.
Things, and he's also a great producer, and that changed, as you said, the band sound a little bit more in the progressive direction.
Yeah.
And and adding Sape since Midnight Ghost, feels like the perfect choice. So there's quite some albums that you always remember something was different with that release afterward.
Yeah, Liquid Monster also had a lot of progressiveness to it. I think I remember too. I think it was Ambiguity. I think you had Dirk from Gamma Ray helping out with that record as a producer as well. And like I said, you know, I think with Sasha, I think with Liquid Monster, that's when kind of the more progressive elements sort of made it in there. But when Memorial Roots came out, man, it was like the songwriting on that, even to this day, is still quite amazing. I go back to that album, not just because of the remix, but the songwriting itself was really, really good. And just so different from what you had done before. So I thought you thought, but yeah, you know what? When I listened to the last three albums, you basically pretty much everything that you've done in the past feels like it became more refined on these last three albums. And there are bands out there that are putting out their best stuff 20, 25 years into their musical career. I mean, you're one of those bands. And amazing how a producer can change everything. It's
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. But lucky enough, we're still Brainstorm. Doesn't
yeah,
matter which kind of producer you hear, you listen to the music and you know it's Brainstorm.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, I think Plague of Rats. So the way I would evaluate it, from compared to, I think this is probably, it could be the best record you've done. To be honest, I mean, it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick because the two previous records have been so good. But it could be the best record you've ever done. It's just, the one thing people don't realize about producers and why something like that is so important is because if you have somebody that you have because you could have a musical chemistry with a producer, that person is going to be the other ear in the room. They're not like as attached or they're not as attached to the music as you are. So you're going to come in with these songs. This person is going to listen to this, and they're going to be able to make changes, refinements, things like that. And I think that's something missing with a lot of bands. I mean, the bands that have people that have that capability are the ones putting out the best albums right now. It's just how it is.
Absolutely, I totally agree. It's when we finish the songwriting and pre-production phase, it's like we're coming to the studio and we have a producer listening to the songs with fresh ears.
Yeah.
I have listened to the songs when I enter the studio about 1,000 times already.
Yeah.
And that's very important. But you have to let things going then a little bit. You have to give your baby out of hand a little bit. But when you know it in good hands, everything is okay.
As a guitar player, you obviously have a variety of influences. Typically I talk to anybody from Germany. The first two people anybody says to me is Uli Roth and Michael Schenker. I mean, were those two guys that you're really big into? Were there any other people that really inspired you to play? Because I know Brainstorm, as a band's been around since the late 80s, early 90s, so it's not like, they formed yesterday. And, I think when I bring up those two guys, I think people forget just how much of an impact they had on so many guitar players and so many, German heavy metal bands and even people over here. Like a lot of guitar players here say Michael Schenker's like it, and do you feel the same way? Do you have any, I had one band from there who wasn't really influenced by them, but grew up on the thrash scene. So, I mean, it's always a little different, but what, guitar players out there really inspired you to start playing?
For me, it was definitely Eddie Van Halen.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I still love everything he did, and I love the way he was playing. And the other guy was the both guitar players from Judas Priest.
Yeah.
And KK. I love the way they worked together and played as a double guitar team. So, but for me personally, it definitely was Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah. Now, are you partial to one era or the other, or are you just like everything that he did?
From start to finish.
Yeah.
I have every album, and I still love every album. Doesn't matter how different they are, but Eddie Van Halen always was Eddie Van Halen.
I agree with you. You always see the arguments online. I like Eddie Van Halen with Sammy Hagar or Roth, but for me, the biggest reason I listened to that band was Eddie's playing.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
what really mattered to me, and it was so different too because with each singer, he kind of evolved in a different way with each phase of that band, and I was and it was sad when he passed, but the guy definitely probably one of the most incredible players and it had a huge influence on everybody.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, I was going to mention him next, but I never really hear his name as much over there. I don't know why, but the guy was definitely just insanely good and had a huge influence on everybody. So So do you have any kind of tour dates planned? Anything coming up for the band coming up this summer? I'm going to assume you probably have started booking shows, and any tour, when do you start going on tour to promote this thing?
Oh yes, it's we do it a little bit different this time. So we go on tour exactly when the album comes out. So we do a release show run. That's how we named it, and the album comes out February 28th, and the tour starts February 27th. So we do a short run. It's just 10 dates, mainly Germany, Switzerland, and Netherlands. But we wanted to go out as soon as possible because of Wall of Skulls is 3.5 years ago now. And people are asking, and we want to promote and present the album.
Yeah.
And we felt it's like a good idea to immediately go out and play some shows, And we're working on. That's the main difference to how we do it usually. We will go on a bigger tour in fall, and in between play the festivals. But the release shows will happen immediately with the album release.
Awesome. Well, that's good to hear, man. And it feels crazy to think the last album was 3.5 years ago. It doesn't seem like, I feel like it came out like, I don't know, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
When it came out. Yeah. And I remember when I was listening to it, it said 2021. I'm like, wow. I go, this is crazy that it's really been that long, has it? Yeah. So, but yeah, I really like the record Plague of Rats. I mean, you have some really cool songs on this. Now, do you do a majority of the lyric writing? Does Andy do it? Do you guys collaborate on it?
Yeah. Oh, Andy is the man for the lyrics. Definitely.
Yeah. So he does all the lyrical content. I was always curious about that.
Yeah.
So, well, we're going to end it off here. Do you have any last words to say to any of the people and the fans that are checking this interview out?
Well, first of all, I have to say thank you. It's my part to say thank you that we can still be around and that people still love us and like to hear and listen to our music. So that's the main important thing. Without the fans, we would be nothing, and we would not be here and doing interviews like that with you. So,
understood. Well, hey, I'll tell you what, Torsten, it was great to have you on, and great to be able to talk about the band and really great record, man. I mean, I think it really turned out great from start to finish, from the songwriting to the production. I think you guys really hit the nail on the head with another one.
Thanks a lot.
Hey everybody, Tony here from the Metal Command podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching, and if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video, and if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support.